was a bad winter, and we needed some extra heat. And I didn't think anything of it. I just bought the space heater and I put it in my daughter's room.
I was gonna make some popcorn, make my own popcorn, and I left it on the stove and I went in to watch TV, and I must have just dozed off.
I had a cord that I had run underneath the carpet. Apparently by walking on it, over the months and years, it damaged the insulation and the cord started a fire in the living room.
And, about 3 o'clock in the morning, my daughter just started screaming.
So I raced into the kitchen and it was just filled with smoke, except like over where the stove was just completely just engulfed in flames.
I mean, I lost everything I had.
There are a lot of streets like this in the city, neighborhoods full of wonderful older homes. Some have been standing for 70 years or more. A home just like this one. I don't know what caused the fire that destroyed it, but chances are it was something small. A dishcloth left on the stove. An electric space heater placed just a little too close to some curtains. An electrical circuit with too many appliances plugged into it. It's these little things that cause many of the fires that burn down houses just like yours, that injure and can kill people like you and your family. Even when the home isn't completely destroyed, as anyone who's ever been there will tell you, the loss of irreplaceable personal possessions, the disruption, the hassle it causes in your life make a residential fire one of the worst experiences you can go through. That's the bad news. The good news is that many destructive fires can be prevented by taking a few simple precautions. It's a matter first of being aware of the common hazards that any of us might have in our homes. And what's even more important, taking action to correct them. New York Property Insurance Underwriting Association has put together a checklist to help you do that. We'll use this checklist as we go through the video, and a copy is packaged with this tape. The checklist is organized around 6 types of hazards that are often responsible for causing fires in the home. Electrical hazards, portable electric space heaters, cooking, candles, storage of flammable substances and debris, and smoking materials. Our hope is that after watching the video, you'll use the checklist to identify and correct fire hazards that could threaten your property and, more importantly, the lives of the people you love. We encourage you to get the entire family involved. That way, you can all work together toward a goal that each and every one of us shares: to be safe at home.
I came down the street and there's fire engines everywhere, and I thought, oh, somebody's house is on fire. And I pull up and I realize it's mine. I found out afterwards that the fire had started from an extension cord that I had run underneath the carpet. And I just put it under there so no one would trip. Apparently by walking on it, over the months and years, it damaged the insulation and the cord started a fire in the living room. Thank God no one was seriously hurt. The tenant was overcome by the smoke, but the firefighters, they got him out in time. 2 of the firefighters were hurt. They got cut by a window going out. It wasn't anything serious, but I was like, it just turned my world upside down. I had to move into my brother's house. Not to mention the loss of stuff that I could never replace. I got pictures from when my baby was born, from our wedding. You never think it's gonna happen to you until you come home one night and you find your house on fire. Well, it's serious business.
Electrical problems are a significant cause of fire, especially in older homes like these. The fundamental safety issue with electricity is overloading of wires and circuits. Any given wire or circuit is only meant to carry so much current. When it's overloaded, it heats up. If it heats up enough, it will ignite combustible materials nearby. Fixed wiring hidden in walls or ceilings, for example, may ignite framing. Many fires start this way. One problem with older homes is that the electrical system might not be able to handle modern appliances, like washers, dryers, and air conditioners, which use a lot of power. If there's any doubt about this, the solution is to have the electrical system inspected by a licensed electrician, and then to bring it up to date and correct any defects. You may be able to determine when your electrical system was last inspected by examining the door and cover of your electrical service panel. Look for a tag or sticker with a date, name, and signature. If it's been more than 10 years, an inspection is advisable. Yes, a professional inspection will cost money, but how much is your life worth? The lives of your family. A major safeguard against overloading any part of the electrical system is the fuse box or circuit breaker panel, which controls distribution of the power that enters your home through the main switch. From the service panel, the electricity flows through the house on separate circuits. It's a good idea to map the circuits in your home, so you know exactly which electrical outlets correspond to each circuit. Each circuit needs to be controlled by a properly rated fuse or circuit breaker. If too much current flows through the circuit, the fuse blows or the circuit breaker trips, cutting off the current. A blown fuse should always be replaced with one with the same amperage, which is the current or rate at which electricity is delivered to an appliance. If the replacement fuse is rated at a higher capacity, it won't protect the circuit against overloading, and that overloaded circuit could very well cause a fire. So make sure you're using the correct fuse. If you don't know the correct size, get advice from a licensed electrician. You should also consult an electrician if a fuse or circuit breaker blows or trips more than once, which could indicate a hazardous condition. Also, it's a good idea to inspect your breaker panel periodically. Switch each breaker on and off to make sure it's not stuck in position. Make sure the panel is clean and dry, and check the interior for signs of overheating, such as discoloration of wiring or breakers. If there seems to be evidence of overheating, have a licensed electrician look at it. Of course, it's reassuring to know that fuses and circuit breakers can help protect circuits against overloading, but the best solution is not to overload the circuit to begin with. A 110 or 120 volt circuit can only handle a specified combined wattage of all the electrical devices connected to it. For example, a 15 amp circuit can safely carry 1500 watts. A 20 amp circuit can handle 2000 watts. It's easy to avoid overloading a circuit. Just check the total load by adding up the power requirement or wattage for each appliance as indicated on the nameplate. For example, a television, computer, and portable fan, each possibly rated at 150 watts, would give you a total of 450, well within the 1500 watt capacity of a 15 amp circuit. But if you add a 1300 watt hair dryer, you've got a problem. In the same way you can overload a circuit, you can also overload an extension cord. Extension cords come in different sizes, designated by a gauge number. For example, 14 gauge, 12 gauge, 10 gauge, and so on. The smaller the number, the bigger the conductor size. When purchasing an extension cord, always look for the label or listing of a nationally recognized testing laboratory. For use with appliances and electronic equipment, rated cords can be purchased that offer a circuit fuse ground fault interrupter, surge protection, on light, and switch, which will provide added safety. A light extension cord such as an 18 gauge cannot safely handle the amount of power required by, for example, a 1400 watt portable heater. Heavier gauge extension cords of reasonable length can safely carry bigger loads. To be safe, check the electrical rating on both the appliance and the extension cord. Never exceed the rating on the cord. It's important to remember that fuses and circuit breakers are designed to protect the house wiring only. They won't protect an overloaded extension cord from overheating. Another hazard associated with extension cords is they make it easy to plug too many appliances into the same circuit, leading to overloading and fire. Never use multiple extension cords on the same circuit. If possible, reposition appliances so extension cords aren't needed. Try to figure out ways to redistribute the load among a number of circuits. When you do use extension cords, remember that they should never be run under carpets, because they could become damaged, overheat, and start a fire. Extension cords should be positioned out of traffic areas so people don't trip on them. It's also important to position and secure them so they won't get damaged. For example, you don't want a heavy piece of furniture resting on an extension cord. The bottom line is that the use of extension cords should be kept to a minimum, and they should be viewed only as a temporary solution, not a permanent one. It isn't just extension cords that can start fires. An appliance's power cord can be a serious fire or shock hazard if the insulation is damaged or if it's otherwise faulty. So check all power cords. If you find any that are damaged, don't use the appliance until the cord is replaced. Check your outlets for any signs of problems. For example, if an outlet cover is hot or discolored from heat, that's a danger sign, indicating an unsafe wiring condition that could start a fire. If this happens, unplug any cords and have a licensed electrician check the wiring as soon as possible. Many times now we've mentioned calling a licensed electrician. What about do-it-yourself electrical projects? When it comes to your home's electrical system, our advice about doing it yourself is don't, because the consequences of a mistake can be deadly. Electrical work is a job for a licensed professional.
It was a bad winter, and we were going through a really, really bad spell, and we needed some extra heat. And I didn't think anything of it. I just bought the space heater and I put it in my daughter's room. I wanted my daughter to be warm. I mean, I just put the space heater in there. I wasn't really thinking about it. And 3 o'clock in the morning, I heard this screaming. We ran and got the kids. I ran into my daughter's room to get her. The curtains were ablaze. The carpet was on fire. The flames were very close to my daughter's bed. And thank God we got out without being harmed. Everything was gone. Everything we worked for. I mean, my wedding pictures, my son's baseball cards, everything gone in an instant. We can't bring it back. None of it.
Properly listed portable electric space heaters are designed to provide supplemental heat to a single room or area. But experience has taught us that they can be a serious fire hazard if they aren't used properly. Combustible materials can be set on fire by an electric heater. This doesn't necessarily require direct contact. Materials can get hot enough to burn if the heater is too close. That's why an electric heater needs to be positioned at least 3 feet away from upholstered furniture, drapes, curtains, bedding, or anything else that can catch fire. It should also be positioned on the floor, in a location where it won't get knocked over accidentally, rather than on a table or other piece of furniture. If you've been using an extension cord with your electric space heater, check the instruction manual. If the manufacturer warns against using extension cords, for safety's sake, remove the cord. Even if the manufacturer doesn't specifically warn against it, it's best to avoid using an extension cord with an electric heater if possible. However, if you do use one, it should be the heavy-duty kind, having 12-gauge conductors, 2 feet or less in length, because heaters use 1,400 watts or more of current, and as we know, an overloaded cord can start a fire. A final word about electric heaters. Electric heater fires that cause fatalities often can happen at night when family members are asleep. To be safe, turn off and unplug electric heaters before you go to bed.
I put a pot on the stove and I was making some oil. I wanted to, it's gonna sound so stupid, try and lose weight, and so I was gonna make some popcorn, make my own popcorn, and I left it on the stove and I went in to watch TV, and I must have just dozed off because the next thing I know, the fire alarm is going off. But by the time the fire department got there, you know, the house was completely engulfed in flames, and by the time they finally put the fire out, it was burnt down to the ground. There was nothing but a big black hole where our house used to be. But my kids weren't home, my dad is safe, I'm okay. I lost everything. I lost everything that belonged to my family over a little pot of oil. Think about what you're doing. I mean, what I did was completely thoughtless. I never thought in my wildest dreams that I would set my own house on fire with a pot cooking on the stove. When your life gets disrupted like that, you in your mind, you know what happened, but in your heart and your body, you keep looking for things that aren't there anymore. The sense of security that the kids used to have, you know, that's gone. You know, my youngest, Patty, just had nightmares for weeks and weeks and weeks. I never gave any thought to something like this happening. I never thought something like this would happen.
When you think of dangerous activities, cooking isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. But the fact is, over 30% of residential fires start in the kitchen. That's because a stove introduces open flames, or in the case of an electric range, intense heat into your family's living space. Often, objects and materials don't even have to come into direct contact with the burner to catch fire. Radiant heat can ignite them if they come close enough. Anything that's likely to burn, such as a pot holder or plastic utensils, should be kept away from the stove. For example, you wouldn't want to mount a dishcloth rack or a roll of paper towels above the stove. The area on or near the range is also not a good location for a cookie jar or anything else that might attract children to climb on top and possibly get burned or set their clothes on fire. It's also important to remind family members not to use the top of the stove as counter space. It's definitely not the place to set down a paper plate or a bag of groceries. Whether there are kids in your household or not, it's dangerous to leave the stove unattended while it's on, especially if the burner is on a high setting, because pots and pans can quickly boil dry. Fats or grease can overheat, or foods can begin to burn, and a fire could develop and get out of control without anyone noticing it. By the way, anytime you're cooking, it's a good practice to keep a cover handy. If a fire occurs in a skillet or a pot, simply cover it and turn off the burner.
Hello? Mom, it's for you.
There's no way to avoid interruptions while cooking, but you can probably think of strategies to minimize their impact. For example, since telephone calls are a common interruption, you might install a phone in the kitchen or keep a portable handy. On a related note, it's extremely dangerous to leave range burners or ovens on as a source of supplemental heating. The thermostat may fail to respond properly if the appliance is kept on continuously, which can result in a serious fire or explosion. And never leave a stove or any heat-producing appliance on when you're away from home. Not all cooking is done in the kitchen. There are hazards associated with portable charcoal and gas-operated cooking grills used for barbecuing. Always follow all of the manufacturer's instructions and keep the owner's manual in a safe and accessible place so you can refer to it when necessary.
Happy birthday to you.
When most of us think of candles, positive images come to mind. A birthday cake, a religious observance, maybe a romantic dinner with someone special. Unfortunately, all too often, candles like this one are responsible for serious fires that destroy beautiful homes like these. So whenever you introduce an open flame into your home, it needs to be treated with respect and caution. A draft from an open window or door, or from a fan, can easily knock a candle over, spread hot wax, or cause a flare-up that could start a fire. So if a candle is flickering in the breeze, either put it out or move it. Candles also don't belong close to drapes, curtains, upholstery, or any other kind of material that can easily catch on fire. Candles should be used only in properly designed and constructed holders and located in secure locations where they aren't likely to be knocked over by children, pets, or others. Finally, a candle shouldn't be left unattended. As long as there are people in the room, fine. But the rule should be, if you go out, so does the candle. You've probably noticed that many of the hazards that could threaten your home are small in size. So small I could hold them in the palm of my hand, like a birthday candle, or an incorrect electrical fuse. What's even more scary is that some fire hazards are invisible. Like the explosive vapors from stored flammable liquids, such as gasoline or paint thinners, which can be ignited by a small spark or flame that's nowhere near the liquid itself. This is the kind of mistake just about everybody is guilty of. We have this leftover stuff from a painting project or whatever. We throw it in a box and lug it down to the basement. And there it sits out of sight and out of mind until it bursts into flames and burns our house down. Long-term storage of flammable liquids is not a good idea, but if you have to store them temporarily, just until you can dispose of them properly, make sure they're in labeled, tightly sealed metal containers. Definitely not glass, which can break and spill their contents. And keep them away from burners, electrical equipment, or other possible sources of flame or spark. Your best bet is to find a place for them outside the house. Also, be aware that spontaneous combustion can occur when old paint or cleaning rags are improperly discarded. Any rags containing linseed oil-based compounds or other refinishing products should be removed from the house. Of course, it isn't just flammable liquids that might pose a fire hazard. Any debris containing paper or wood could be unintentionally ignited, for example, by an improperly discarded cigarette. As with flammable liquids, plan on disposing of common combustible debris as soon as possible by taking it to the dump, putting it out for trash collection, or whatever the procedure might be in your community. In the meantime, if you are temporarily storing combustible materials inside the house, keep them away from heat, flame, or other possible sources of ignition, such as water heaters and furnaces. Got a match? Chances are that even if you don't smoke, you probably do have matches or a cigarette lighter in the home. You probably also have children in the home, either as regular members of your household or as occasional visitors. So it's useful to bear in mind that every year hundreds of lives are lost in fires started by kids playing with matches or lighters. What's even more grim is that most of these victims are under 5 years old. The best way to prevent this tragic and unnecessary loss of innocent young lives is to keep matches and lighters out of the sight and reach of children. But it's not just kids who can get into trouble with matches. Adults cause their share of fires by careless use of smoking materials. National fire data indicates that about 5% of residential fires happen because of careless smoking. Yet this cause alone results in 22% of all fire deaths. Truly a sobering thought in terms of fire casualties. Here again, one of the biggest dangers is something small. The smoldering cigarette butt that finds its way behind seat cushions or into the trash. A fire that starts this way can take hours to develop and might not erupt until long after you've gone to bed or left the house. So don't take any chances. Check for smoldering butts. And the best thing to do with the contents of an ashtray is to flush them down the toilet. We've covered a lot of ground in this video. We've learned that by keeping flammable materials away from ignition sources or heat, we can reduce the risk of fire. We've discussed the necessity of properly maintaining our electrical service and heating equipment. We've stressed the importance of never leaving any heat-producing device, appliance, or flame unattended. There are many other steps you can take to keep your family and your property safe. Because electrical appliances such as clothes dryers, refrigerators, fans, and air conditioners are heat producers and possible ignition sources, you can make sure they are well maintained, clean and free of any lint or other debris that might catch fire. You can discourage children from playing with matches or lighters by educating them that fire is a tool for adults, not a toy. You can install visible, audible working smoke detectors and check the battery regularly. You might even consider installing a sprinkler system. You can post emergency phone numbers in a conspicuous and handy location. And you can discuss with your family what to do in case of fire. Develop an escape plan, and have periodic exit drills. A final thought. Throughout the video, we've talked quite a bit about the little things that can cause a fire. In wrapping up, I'd like to focus not on the little things, but on the one big thing, which is the safety of your family. Yes, losing your property to a fire would be tough. Your home represents an investment, your part of time, energy, and money. And being a homeowner is something to be proud of. But there's nothing tougher than having a spouse or a child hurt or killed in a tragedy that could have been avoided. This checklist represents one useful aid that can help you avoid that tragedy, but it'll only assist you if you use it. So please, use your checklist to identify possible fire hazards and eliminate them. Get everyone in your household involved, young and old. Together, take the positive steps necessary to be safe at home.